Hi everyone, Richard here at Calvin Wazoo with another video for you. And today I'm going to talk about Led Zeppelin. So I know, a lot of people have done a lot of, videos about Led Zeppelin, a lot of focus on Led Zeppelin, and a lot of videos ranking the different, albums. I'm not really going to do that. I'm just going to go through their discography and just, talk about where I was and my reactions to these records as they were being released. Certainly, Led Zeppelin has been a major influence on my musical tastes. It made a significant impact on me as a person growing up at that time. And they have been, a favorite band of mine. And at the time they were releasing records, they were my favorite group of all. Nowadays, I still really like them. Of their main discography, I have all but one. And also, I don't have them all on vinyl. I have just about all of them on vinyl. There's just one I do not have on vinyl. I have on CD. And then the other of the main releases, Coda, I do not have. And I keep vacillating between, do I want it? Do I not want it? I was on the bandwagon for a while that Coda sucks. But, maybe I'll take another, listen to it. But by and large, I don't listen to my Led Zeppelin records with the frequency I did in the past. I mean, there were times I was listening to it all the time. And not so much now. I might pull out one or two Zeppelin records once a year and give them a listen. In fact, I listened to one just before making this video because it'd been so long since I listened to it. I was like, I need to give it another listen. And shoot, the last time I listened to that record was probably a good couple of years ago. But I still love the group, still love the band and their music, and there's no denying the footprint that they left, in the rock and roll world. So I'll get started with, the first one, Led Zeppelin 1. And I remember when my brother brought this home, it was it just kind of blew my mind. I mean, this was 1969. So I would have been 10, 11 years old. And so it was my brother who, brought this into the house, and I listened to it, and it's hard to explain being an 11-year-old and then, listening to this kind of music. I mean, so much other music of the era was, it was more, on the pop side, but there was stuff being produced, Jimi Hendrix, coming out at that time. And then, the Rolling Stones were shifting their direction at the time. The Beatles were making a major shift in their direction, away from this. But then, Led Zeppelin pops on the scene. And I didn't know anything about the Yardbirds or, any of the earlier iterations that the members of the bands had played in, particularly Jimmy Page. But yeah, this record, I'm going to pull out here so I can look at the track listing. I mean, all of this, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You is a song that, I was like banging my head at 11 years old listening to that. You know, but, you know, the opening, good times, bad times, and babe, I'm going to leave you. You shook me, dazed and confused. Just amazing, amazing songs. Side two, Your Time Is Gonna Come, had this exultant feel to it, despite the song being sort of a vengeful kind of song. The Black Mountain side, just amazing, amazing guitar playing, acoustic guitar playing by Jimmy Page. Communication Breakdown, that was, you know, kind of a standard pop kind of song to me. I Can't Quit You Baby, which you know, that's another Willie Dixon. They did 2 Willie Dixon songs. But I just like, you know, I can't quit you, babe. I mean, he says babe, he doesn't say baby. And then How Many More Times, that do 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 do, just that heavy driving beat. So just totally blew my mind. And then being released in the same year, we get Led Zeppelin 2, which a lot of people said, oh man, this is so much better than, you know, Led Zeppelin 1. But I still, to this day, like Led Zeppelin 1 better than Led Zeppelin 2. And I'm sure, again, this was a record that, now I'm trying to remember, if I bought this, I don't think I bought this at the time. I think this was still a record that my brother had, because I honestly believe the first record I ever bought was Black Sabbath's debut, which I think was 1970. That might have been the first record I ever bought on my own. But anyway, yeah, Led Zeppelin 2, and I'm sure he probably had, or maybe he had, you know, Robert Ludwig pressing, because, you know, he got it, my brother got the record, you know, right when it came out. This is, the one I have here is not a Robert Ludwig pressing. But, you know, yeah, there's great. It's A Whole Lot of Love, What Is and What Should Never Be. That song, you know, I really like that song. The Lemon Song, to me, it was, you know, as a prurient 11-year-old, you know, we giggled at that song. Thank You, Heartbreaker, and Living Loving Maid. The two of them together is really quite good. Ramble On is a good song. I really like that. The Moby Dick drum solo it's good, you know, to me. And then Bring It On Home is the way Robert Plant sings it is, he almost makes it sound dirty. But yeah, Led Zeppelin 2, I still to this day think that Led Zeppelin 1 is better than Led Zeppelin 2. And I know a lot of people really think that, you know, that Led Zeppelin 2 was a major improvement on Led Zeppelin 1. But over the years, I kind of came to this conclusion that Led Zeppelin 2 is, you know, it was just more of Led Zeppelin 1. You know, I like it better. You know, I've heard lots of shows where they, you know, the show where the basic theme is groups that had an outstanding debut album in which their follow-up, their sophomore release, was as strong or better. And this one is brought up all the time, that Led Zeppelin 2 was even better than Led Zeppelin 1. I'm repeating myself. I really don't get that. Now, the next one that came out, I did buy this one on my own, although I'm pretty sure my brother had it as well. And that's Led Zeppelin 3. And this album Okay, so we're talking 1970 when it came out. So I'm like 12 years old. And I don't know, this record spoke to me in very odd ways. I mean, side one is kind of like, you know, the acoustic side. Side two is the electric rock and roll side. But yeah, Immigrant Song and Friends, Celebration Day. But the song Since I've Been Loving You, to me, is such a powerful, driving blues ballad that, oh man, I would listen to that over and over and over and over and over and over again for years and years and years. Just so loved that song. And Out on the Tiles, you know, just a great closer for side one. Then Gallows Pole, opening side two. I was very amused by the song. I thought it was really interesting and quirky, but really, really loved it. And then the next few songs, Tangerine, oh man, I just loved that song. Such a beautiful, beautiful song. And then That's the Way. That song for many, many years became my favorite Led Zeppelin song, and is one of the reasons why this particular record is really near and dear to my heart. I mean, everything about this record is really quite good, but the song, you know, That's the Way, I just love the song. And I love the images that that it brought to me. And now I had a friend at that time who, well, it would have been later because, like I say, this came out when I was about 12 years old. But later I met this other kid that I would hang around with, and he always dismissed that song. He thought it was a queer song, a song about faggots. And really hit me, you know, that he would say something like that. And kind of bugged me too, because, you know, I was starting to become, you know, aware of my own personal sexuality. And for him to say something so hateful like that about that song, which I thought was just so beautiful. But there were so many things about that song that, you know, not just like the line, you know, my friend, the boy next door, and, you know, mama saying that, you know, he can't be with him. But then the line about all the fish that lay in dirty water dying. You know, this was 1970. This is when pollution was really bad in the United States. I mean, it was really bad. They were releasing articles talking about that the air in New York City and Los Angeles was so polluted that just breathing the air in these cities was the equivalent of smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day. And that the Cuyahoga River that was in Ohio flowing into Lake Erie through Cleveland was so polluted with industrial waste that it caught fire, I think, 3 times. The river just caught fire, all right? Lake Erie was declared dead. I mean, it was a really, really bad time environmentally in the United States. So that song also had this very strong connection with me because I could see this happening. I mean, I lived in an industrial town, you know, where one of the largest Dow chemical plants in the world at that time was located. It was Midland, Michigan, which is the, you know, the home headquarters, or was the home headquarters of Dow Chemical. And, you know, I had terrible, terrible issues, you know, growing up, you know, as a really young kid, heading to the hospital. I was hospitalized twice for pneumonia, had really, really severe asthma. And when we moved away from Midland, my asthma went away and was really limited to some allergic responses. But But yeah, that song just, this album really means a lot to me. Your Stomp, hats off to Roy Harper, again, closing it. Just an amazing record. So this one tends to be a toss-up in terms of where, you know, of being one of my favorites in the Led Zeppelin catalog. Well, then we come to a year later. I mean, they were just releasing records like one after the other, really, for a while. But a year later came this juggernaut of a record. And there's still, I guess, a debate as to what is it called? You know, because, again, you've got this record with no text on the front, no text on the back. This is a reissue, one of the Jimmy Page reissues. And, you know, and on the spine, nothing other than the catalog number. And then, you know, you got this in here. Just a really interesting album. And at that time, all right, we're talking 1971, so I'm like 13 years old. And, you know, at that age, there were a lot of very metaphysical and occult kind of things that I was very interested in. I was really infatuated with werewolves at that time. I read a bunch of books on werewolves and poltergeists and all kinds of things like that. And so this album, just the cover has already got this intriguing allure to it. And then we've got, you know, on the label itself, you can, you know, you've got the runes, and then, you know, it says Zoso. So it was like, all right, is the name of the album Zoso? Is it Led Zeppelin 4? In many websites, it's listed as Led Zeppelin 4. It's also been referred to as the Runes album. But anyway, it's just, and of course it has the anthemic rocker Stairway to Heaven, which, yes, I mean, it's a great song. But there are so many other songs on here that when I was listening to it are better, way better, in my opinion, than Stairway to Heaven. Although Stairway to Heaven is a magnificent anthemic rocker. But, you know, Black Dog, that opening groove, it's just like, and then that subtle, you know, right at the beginning. And then, you know, early pressings, you could hear, you know, what was going to happen next, you know, because of the, you know, the dead silent parts. I noticed that was, you know, many of my records at that time. And then Rock and Roll, just a very simple, but man, what a driving song. I can remember at that time, or shortly after, I might have been in 8th grade or 9th grade, going to like a house party that one of my friends was having. And sometimes, you know, because it was a very small house and it got kind of crowded, and it was very close, like not quite off, it was on a side street away from an elementary school that I had attended, but I was in junior high school for sure by this time. And, you know, we'd go outside and hang out on the playground there at the school. And then I just remember another boy there, you know, talking about Black Dog and what a great song it was. And then you got Rock and Roll Animal. And then we've got the Battle of Evermore. You know, I was a huge Tolkien fan. You know, I had already by that time read The Lord of the Rings probably twice. And that song was just, you know, so much about it with the illusions to The Lord of the Rings and the Ringwraiths riding black, etc. It was, what a great song. And in the mandolin and everything, it was just so different from what Led Zeppelin had been doing. So they were really, in my mind, this was a band that was changing and growing. Then, side 2, Misty Mountain Hop. Oh, love that song. Four Sticks, Going to California, and then When the Levee Breaks. Now, to me, that song, talk about a song with just a pounding, driving drum rhythm. I guess in the recording of this, they had Bonham's drums set up in this open hall of this manor that they were recording in. And Jimmy Page just loved the way the room, that space, and the drums sounded, that they kept it that way. And then they would drop mics down rather than actually miking the drums themselves. They would drop mics down like that. I mean, I'm sure there are people who are much more knowledgeable about Led Zeppelin who could talk, about how they did that. But yes, When the Levee Breaks, just an amazing, amazing song. And I'm like, wow. So I'm kind of vacillating now between Led Zeppelin 3 and Led Zeppelin 4 as, like being my favorites. Then the next one they released, which would have been 1973, was this one, Houses of the Holy. And again, we're getting an album cover that, there's no text. All right. And then on the spine, not even a catalog number, on the spine. So this is an early pressing, and this was a Robert Ludwig, mix. But it's not as famous as the hot mix for Led Zeppelin 2. But, got the inside. So there's like nothing. No text anywhere on the album cover, right? And I remember seeing this for the first time when I bought it. I remember being in a store. It was a general merchandiser, like Giant Way or Grant. These were stores we had, Kmart, and it might have been a Kmart. Kmart might have existed, by then. It might, I remember Zare, at that time. But okay, so we're talking 1973. So we're looking at, I am, let's see, 1972, I'd be 14. So I'd be 15. And we were transitioning between living in Midland, Michigan, and moving to where my parents retired. I was the youngest in the family, so I was the last one at home, and we were transitioning. But I remember being in Midland at a Grant or something like that. It was on Saginaw Road by East Lawn, very close to the high school. There's a strip mall there. And I was in there, and they had some records, and I saw this, and I'm like, wow. And I bought it immediately. And yeah, what a record this is. So Houses of the Holy, the songs on here, I need to pull this out because of the sleeve can't see through it. So the song remains the same. The Rain Song, Over the Hills Far Away, the Crunge. These were all really great songs, but they didn't quite hit me like the songs did in Led Zeppelin 3 and Led Zeppelin 4, but still great, great songs. Dancing Days is probably my favorite song on this record. Jamaica, which I can remember everybody goes, it's Dire Maker, but Jamaica. And then No Quarter, again, although No Quarter I think is a reference to an actual battle from the Middle Ages or something that in Britain, it still had this allure that reminded me of the Lord of the Rings and the Paths of the Dead. You know, with the line, they took the paths where no one goes. But, you know, and there was no quarter when, you know, when they brought those ghosts, you know, out of the mountain, you know, to fight Sauron's enemies. There was no quarter being held there. But I guess it was really more of some other Battle of Hastings or something. I don't know. It might even been a Scandinavian battle and not a battle in Britain. You know, and then it closes with The Ocean. Great record. Still really, really strong. And one that, again, I was listening to all the time after I bought it. Then came in 1975 this tour de force, Physical Graffiti. Mind-blowing record. Just, and, you know, but the weird thing about it was side 1 and side 2 are like super solid. Side 3 and side 4 are good, but they didn't stack up to sides 1 and 2. You know, and you've got, you know, like the songs, well, let me get the chart out to make sure I get them. You know, Custard Pie, The Rover, In My Time of Dying, Houses of the Holy, Trampled Underfoot, and Kashmir. I can remember, all right, so this would have been 1975, and so that summer I turned 17, and it was, I think, the last summer that I attended this program up at Michigan Technological University. I went a couple of years in a row. They had a writing program, and I went to that. It was a really cool program because they had, you know, there was a writing program. They had a jazz band lab. There were a lot of different programs they had in the summer. And then you lived in the dorms there at MTU. And my roommate at that time was a kid who had this with him on 8-track, I think it was. And so at night we would, you know, we'd be in our own, you know, each in our own bed, and then we would play this Kashmir and listen to that. And it was just, you know, wild, crazy good song. You know, and then you got sides 3 and 4, which are good. I mean, In the Light, the Bron-Y-Aur Stomp, well, Bron-Y-Aur, that Bron-Y-Aur Stomp is from number 3. Seaside, 10 Years Gone, great songs, again, but they seem to just be they were just dialed down a little bit, you know? And then side 4, Night Flight, The Wanted song, Boogie with Stu. I love that song. That is such a great song. And Black Country Woman, and then closing was Sick Again. But yeah, a really great, it's a solid album. But it was, you know, so huge. But nonetheless, still, all right, Led Zeppelin is just cranking things out. Well, then came in 1976, Presence. Now, this is the one that I only have on CD. And I'll get it, you know, on vinyl. And this was the one I had to listen to before making this video because I hadn't listened to it in like a really long time. And this is when, now if you go to the All Music Guide and you look at the star ratings that the All Music Guide gives to everything from, you know, Led Zeppelin 1 up to Physical Graffiti, it's solid 5 stars all the way across. Then you get to Presence and they give it 3.5 stars. So I was listening to it, you know, today before making, you know, this one. And I tell you, this has really grown on me over the years. I kind of always dismissed it a little bit, but I think I was like, you know, like teenagers, I was influenced by my peer group, and they tended to diss this record in comparison to the others. But wow, this has really grown on me. I mean, opening Achilles' Last Stand, just sprawling, almost prog-like, very grandiose feel to it. Again, very different from anything that I associated with Led Zeppelin, which maybe is why some of my peers, were kind of dismissing it. I also hear the staccato drums and guitar, and I kept thinking, wow, this is the progenitor of Metallica, because it has, that sound, to it. Then you've got the next song, For Your Life, which is just a really solid blues rock with a great guitar solo. Royal Orleans has this very funky rhythmic feel to it. But then to me, the best song on here is Nobody's Fault But Mine. I love the spacey opening guitar. Almost sounds like an electrified viola with fuzz on it. And then you got the drums and bass coming in, setting this heavy beat that just pounds life into your aura. That's the way I feel it coming in. And Plant's vocals almost sound normal on this song. See, this was recorded after he had that car crash in Greece. And apparently during the recording, he was in a wheelchair for when he would record the vocals. And you can kind of hear how his vocals are just not as strong in many of the songs. They don't quite have that push that his vocals normally had. But he gets it on this song. You can hear he's just really pulling his voice from deep within him on this song. And then the harmonica playing on this song. Plant is putting some stank on that harmonica. It's just really, really... And the closing guitar solo that Page does before the final close is also just really stabbing. Then we've got, then it's got Candy Store Rock, which is kind of a rockabilly kind of feel to the song. I could hear Elvis doing that song, And then Hot's On for Nowhere is the next one. This is a funky jam rocker with a touch of country. And I kind of wonder, in the first couple albums, Jimmy Page was playing a Telecaster, and then I guess he switched to Gibson guitar. And I'm wondering if he switched back for this song to a Telecaster. I love the la la da las, on that. And I keep thinking again, if Plant wasn't sitting in a wheelchair, what was his vocals be like if he was able to stand up on this, song? The other thing I really like about this song is there are no added guitars. Okay, a lot of other Zeppelin recordings, you've got there in the background, you've got Jimmy Page playing a rhythm, but then you also have him playing the lead guitar. So he's playing a solo while you can still hear a rhythm guitar part. This song doesn't have that. It's very clean, very minimal. So to me, that means it can easily be done, as a live show. And then there's the last song, T for One, that kind of has a weird opening. And then it drops into this electric blues groove that is, excuse me, my voice. Wild coffee mug, huh? It kind of drops into this blues ballad groove that's very reminiscent of Since I've Been Loving You from Led Zeppelin 3. But it kind of lacks the intensity. And it even comes off as being a bit insincere to me. But this is a really, really solid album that I also really, really like. So then the final one that I have is In Through the Outdoor. And I know there's like 4 covers, and this is the one that I have. I'm not going to try and collect all 4 different covers or how many of them there are. But this was in 1979. And for all practical purposes is their last complete, studio album, because Coda was kind of a mix of some disjecta membra, that they had and they brought in, although there are apparently some really, really strong songs on that. So I was dismissive about Coda in the past. I'm kind of leaning that maybe I should pick it up. But anyway, In Through the Outdoor, again, has this very different feel to it than, again, anything else. And it's a little more on the, I don't know, I want to say mellow side, but it's not a mellow album. But In the Evening is a great song. Southbound Suarez, Fool in the Rain, Hot Dog, looking at the songs here, Carousel Alhambra. All of My Love was, the big hit. But they're all, to me, again, they're all really, really good songs. I think this album deserves more. It's got 3.5 stars from the All Music Guide. I think it should get a full 4 stars. To me, it is a really, really good one, but it is kind of their swan song. Being on the swan song label, it kind of, really was, because then we know, we get John Bonham eventually dying, shortly thereafter. We've got Jimmy Page also dealing with addiction at that time. So the album does get a little more critical analysis from people based on the other ones. And, people point to the problems, so to speak, that were going on. But I still think this is a damn fine album. And I think it does live up to the standard that Led Zeppelin had established with all its previous releases. So, I'm not interested in trying to collect, some of the other issues and all the other different pressings, of Led Zeppelin. The song remains the same. The soundtrack from the movie, I'm not really interested in getting that. Not really interested in getting Celebration Day, which was released in 2012. But I am kind of interested. I think I'll look for Coda and get that, just because maybe I was being a little bit too dismissive of it. And I think it's probably worth having in the collection. So that's my Led Zeppelin collection. Like I say, I don't listen to this stuff very much anymore. But it is very important in my own appreciation and my own development in terms of listening to music and rock music and the influence it had on me. There's no denying that. And there's no denying the impact that Led Zeppelin had on so many other bands. I mean, again, going with Achilles' Last Stand, I think that was the one that, you've got that staccato of the drums and the guitar. I was like going, wow, this is where Metallica got their influence from. Very cool stuff. I hope you enjoyed this reminiscence of nearly 40 minutes. Sorry for the length. But hey, share your thoughts in the Down Under. What are, your favorite Led Zeppelin? What do you think of some of these records and releases that they had? But always, please keep in mind, pray for the people inside your head, for they won't be there when you're dead.